Kaiser Soze. To Kaiser Soze. So, welcome to a new show I just started today called, what am I calling it? Viewer Requested Reviews. I was bored, so I went on Facebook and I asked, hey, what should I watch and talk about on the interwebs? And my boss, of all people, the same gentleman who purchased that excellent tequila for me, said I should watch The Usual Suspect, one of his favorite movies. So I said, fuck it, why not? The Usual Suspects is a movie I've seen time and time again. 90s classic. For this particular viewing, I dig doing it because he asked me to. I like the fact that slowly but surely there's a little bit of growth here, so right up front I want to say thank you to him and anybody else who gives a shit enough to watch my bullshit on the internet and talk about movies and whatever else. If you want me to review something in particular, if I have it on DVD or Blu-ray or if it's on Netflix or whatever, throw a comment in the links, or throw a link in the comments. Whatever. Comment in the video below. What am I saying? I've had some tequila shots this evening. Comment on this video with shit you want me to watch if you have anything you want me to review. Find me on Facebook, find me on Twitter. Reach out, let me know if there's anything in particular you want to watch. I like the idea of doing this, so I'm sure I can try to continue it and make it a recurring series. So, The Usual Suspects. Here's the details. Came out in 1995, directed by Bryan Singer, and can't remember the writer's name. I think it's Christopher McQuarrie. Starring everybody. It's the ultimate, character actor movie. You watch this movie and you're like, hey, it's that guy, in pretty much every scene. The five main dudes are actors that no one really knew much about then, but a few of them have gone on to become pretty goddamn, impressive. It's, Gabriel Byrne is sort of the lead character. He's been in a bunch of stuff. In particular, I know him from the Coen Brothers, Miller's Crossing, excellent movie. Then we got Kevin Pollak, who's popped up from everything from Few Good Men to The Whole Nine Yards to Cop Out. Kevin Pollak has been acting forever, and he's amazing. You got Benicio del Toro, who has got an Oscar now for Traffic, and if you don't know who Benicio del Toro is, then go look it up on the internet. Who else we got? We got Kevin Spacey, of course. He won an Oscar for this role. And, am I skipping somebody? Oh, yeah. Stephen Baldwin. So, yeah, it's kind of the ultimate, character actor movie. There's a bunch of other people that you'll recognize throughout who I don't even know their names. I think his name is Chaz Palminteri, I think, plays a detective in this movie. He's been in a bunch of stuff. Pretty much every scene has an actor or an actress where you're like, holy shit, that guy's been in everything. I love that guy. One of my favorites is the FBI agent, I think it's FBI, played by Giancarlo Esposito, who I know from Do the Right Thing primarily. He played Buggin' Out, the character with the big glasses who starts the riot at the pizza parlor. Anyway, the cast is phenomenal. As I said, came out in 1995, was a huge hit, pop cultural kind of phenomenon. It won, it was nominated for 2 Oscars and won both. Best Supporting Actor for Kevin Spacey, who, as I said, wasn't quite the big deal he is now, and 2 for Best Original Screenplay. Spacey had done Swimming with Sharks the year before, really fucking underrated movie if you haven't seen it. He had done, I think The Ref had come out with Dennis Leary. He had done the Clint Eastwood film Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil. So he'd been around and people had known, this guy's amazing, but this was kind of his, his homecoming, welcome to the world, here you go, man, Kevin Spacey. And he won an Oscar, and a year or two later he would do Seven playing a bad guy. So for a little while there, he was sort of typecast as the dude in the movie who turns out as the bad guy. Which, by the way, I should have mentioned at the beginning, spoilers for The Usual Suspects. The movie is 21 years old, so I feel okay just kind of throwing it out there. I'm going to go into very massive detail about the thing. I will say the part I said at the beginning, which is, before I said spoilers, that Kevin Spacey's the bad guy, doesn't at all ruin your enjoyment of the film. It's all about how the story is told. But yeah, spoilers. If you don't want to know all the little details and how the movie is, told, watch the movie first. It's on Netflix. It's 20 years old. And come back and then check out the review. Spacey is amazing in this movie. I haven't seen this flick in years because it's one of those movies where the whole movie is predicated on one question, and that question is answered, and it's a wonderful twist. And unlike movies like, say, The Sixth Sense or Fight Club, this movie, the twist, once you know it, for me anyway, I don't really want to watch the movie again. Like, it just kind of lessens the whole impact of the whole movie. That being said, having not seen it in 4, 5, 6 years, whatever it is, I did enjoy myself this time, despite some really boring stretches. I'm not going to do my usual beat-by-beat plot synopsis of the film. If you've seen the movie, then you know that doesn't really matter anyway. He's making it up as he goes along. Everything he says could be complete bullshit. We have no idea, so it doesn't really matter the plot in this case. It's a well-told story, but once you know the story, the intricacies of the plot are so not the important part. So speaking of the pop culture of it all, I mentioned, it was a big hit and won an Oscar and Kevin Spacey, and it was kind of a pop cultural thing. For my money, there were 3 big questions if you were a movie fan in the 90s. Those questions were, what's in the box? Asked by Brad Pitt to Kevin Spacey. Hey, imagine that. What's in the box? 2, what's in the fucking briefcase that Travolta and Sam Jackson get? Never explained. And 3, who is Kaiser Soze? Now, granted, they do explain in the movie who Kaiser Soze is, but that's the big thing, the marketing campaign, the big, if you're going to talk about Wrath of Khan, it's all about the moment where Kirk screams Khan. If you're talking about Usual Suspects, it's all about that iconic Kaiser Soze thing and who it is, and the whole time you're like, who the fuck is this guy? And that's what the movie's about, in a weird way. As far as it winning Best Screenplay, I get it. It's an intricate story. It's for me, it's almost, in a weird way, the quintessential 90s movie. Because the 90s, particularly by 95, they kind of defined themselves, the 90s had been defined as a renaissance for movie fans, for cinema fans. So a movie like The Usual Suspects would have been made in the 80s, but it wouldn't have been clever, it wouldn't have been character driven, it would have been way more explosions, and it would have been, the bad guy gets killed in the end. The 90s was all about bringing back favorites and bringing new twists on them, whether it's film noir, or the crime story, or westerns in the case of Unforgiven, or romance movies, whatever it is, the 90s kind of was this new golden age of cinema. So for my money, when I watch The Usual Suspects, all I can think about is Quentin Tarantino, and Guy Ritchie, and fucking Scorsese, and the Coen brothers, and I wrote down another name, and Soderbergh. This was the time when, crime movies, not just crime movies, but, funny, smart-ass, back-and-forth dialogue, self-referential dialogue, pop culture referencing dialogue, became very much in vogue because of movies like Goodfellas and primarily Pulp Fiction. So if you go look at Soderbergh's output in the 90s, it was all, he did a few weird independent films, but, Out of Sight, great fucking movie, very much, it's the same guy who did Jackie Brown. Rum Punch is the book. He did Ocean's 11. It's just very much look at these actors, and everyone's being witty and funny, and everyone gets to shine and have their moments. So, there's nothing thoroughly original about this story, but this movie, that's part of what makes it good. Is that it's such a familiar tale. Even the title, The Usual Suspects, for those of you who don't know, it's a reference to Casablanca. And I give them credit for not actually making the direct reference in the movie. At one point, Kevin Spacey does say, "You're the ones who rounded us up," and the line from Casablanca is, "Round up the usual suspects." I'll give it the plot synopsis again. I don't really care about, but the thing that's cool about it is, as you see in this picture that maybe you can't see very well, is 5 criminals are brought together because somebody robbed a truck that was carrying guns. So 5 people are brought in to do a lineup, and it's an unusual thing because. Usually in a lineup, and there's a line of dialogue in the movie about it, it's the guy who did it and then 4 people who, they're just there, homeless guys the cops paid. In this case, it's 5 real criminals in a room. And the one person who doesn't really belong there is Kevin Spacey. Kevin Spacey's character, Verbal Kint, he's got a limp, he's got a deformity, he can't really walk. So the idea that he robbed a truck at gunpoint, probably not, right? So what the fuck is he doing there? And that's laid in very early on, is Kevin Spacey is the outsider to this group. But I like the idea of what happens when you get 5 people alone in a room. They're all brought in to do the lineup. Then they're kept in a holding cell, and while they're there, they start chit-chatting, and the movie begins with the 5 of them team up to start stealing shit and going on a crime spree. I got some notes here because, as I said, I was drinking, and it's been a long time since I've seen it, so I wanted to make sure I hit the key points. Let me see. Oh, his character, Verbal Kent, Spacey's character. Apparently his name is actually Roger, but everyone calls him Verbal. And I'm one of those people who never really got a nickname. Like, I've been called by my last name, or I've been called Georgie. But I never really got a nickname. And Verbal I always wanted, because the line in the movie is, who's this guy? That's Verbal Kent. He's a good guy. Verbal? And Spacey's like, well, Roger, actually, but people say I talk too much. I like that line. I like the idea. I will say, in terms of the twist ending, it's a phenomenal climax. Everything leading up to the climax is like this whole action sequence on a boat with, like, is there cocaine, is there not? Like, 15 people get shot and killed, there's explosions, we're seeing characters get killed off by an off-screen killer, very Hitchcockian. All that stuff, when you're watching it the first time, you're riveted. On a rewatch, like, it's all bullshit. Like, none of that actually happened the way we saw it happen. But the actual ending where we figure out what's going on, and that Spacey's been telling lies and stories and making things up, and that he is Kaiser Soze, is a phenomenal piece of screenwriting and editing and performance. But, weirdly enough, it was sort of spoiled for me because I'd seen Scary Movie. The first Scary Movie was one of my first R-rated comedies that I watched, like current R-rated comedies. It was current at the time. And if you remember in Scary Movie, there's a character based on the David Arquette character from Scream, the kind of stupid local hick cop. In Scary Movie, he's a full-on mentally retarded character. And at the end of the movie, they do the whole thing where, like, the coffee cup falls and it shatters and slow motion, and then you see the character, Dewey's his name, walking with his little mentally challenged kind of limp, and then the walk smooths out and he takes off the mustache and he looks really fucking cool. That's how The Usual Suspects ends as well. And it's a really great ending where the whole time the movie is predicated on something happened at this on this dock with this boat. People got killed. $91 million. Was there cocaine? What the fuck's going on? And Spacey is the only survivor, and he's being interrogated by a detective who's got a hard-on for wanting to catch Gabriel Byrne. Gabriel Byrne's character was used to be a cop. He was a dirty cop, and apparently he's gone legit, but this detective doesn't think so. So Spacey is telling the whole story, and it's through flashbacks. And he goes off on tangents about, when I was in this barbershop quartet in Skokie, Illinois, and a bunch of different references. At the end of the movie, when Spacey has been left, he's on parole, he got immunity, he's free to leave. At the end of the movie, the 2 cops are hanging out in that office where the whole movie's taking place. Instead of being an interrogation room, the interrogation happens in the police chief's office. One of the cops says, "Man, your office is such a shithole, it's so fucking cluttered." And then he starts really looking at all the images and paperwork and notes and, whatever on the walls. And everything that he sees syncs up to something that Spacey said. And the score's going, and then you start hearing snippets of dialogue. It's a really fucking cool twist. Leading up to the coffee cup dropping moment where the character realizes, holy shit, that was Kaiser Soze. But Spacey mentioned this lawyer person named Kobayashi. Which, if you're a Star Trek fan, right away you should know something is wrong. Because the Kobayashi Maru is the unbeatable test, unless you're Captain Kirk. Anyway. When he's the cop's figuring out, holy shit, like, the things he referenced are all on the wall, and maybe that dude, the cripple guy, maybe that is Kaiser Soze. He drops his coffee cup, and it shatters, and on the bottom of the coffee cup it says Kobayashi was, like, the manufacturer. So, again, it's really fucking cool the first time you watch it. On rewatch, it's like, I don't have any investment in any of this, because none of it is really true, as far as I know. Like, he's making everything up. The real joy comes from, in rewatching anyway, the joy comes from seeing those actors do their thing. Again, the dialogue feels very Quentin Tarantino-y or Guy Ritchie-like, but it's good dialogue. All the actors probably improvised a lot of stuff. Benicio del Toro, in particular, speaks in this really fucking goofy, muttery, stumbly kind of way. And it feels like a lot of what he was doing was improvised. In fact, there's a story I heard that in the middle of shooting the movie, the rest of the crew went to go talk to the director, and they were like, "Hey, listen, Brian, we love this movie and we respect Benicio as an actor, but we can't understand what he's saying." Because the whole movie, he's just very, So yeah, the twist is really cool. The first time you see it, it's great. Not a lot of rewatchability. I always equate it to, what's it called? Memento. The Chris Nolan movie from back in the day with Guy Pearce, and he's got tattoos on him, and, you know, his memory only lasts for, like, I don't know, like an hour or two at a time. And the whole movie is told in reverse order, so we're trying to figure out who killed his wife. By the end of that movie, the first time, I was like, holy shit, what an amazing piece of storytelling, and the screenplay is brilliant, and the ending is so heartbreakingly beautiful and wonderful and painful and amazing. But when I try to go back and rewatch that movie, despite the performances and how interesting it is, once you know the secret, it loses some of its punch. Maybe that's not true for everybody, but for me, a good twist is one that, if you took the twist away, the movie would still be good. Like, I always cite Fight Club and The Sixth Sense. If you take out the last, I don't know, 10 minutes of The Sixth Sense, that movie is still really compelling and creepy and scary and emotional. Fight Club's a little different because the twist happens and there's like 34 minutes of movie left. But if you take out that last act and you just tell that story about these two dudes going off and doing their thing, the movie is still compelling and interesting. The twist just ups everything to a new level. With The Usual Suspects, when you take the twist away, the who is Kaiser Soze of it all, it just becomes a series of vignettes of dudes pulling capers. Which is fun, but doesn't have, like, that's just a crime movie. And if you're going to see a crime movie about guys pulling a caper, go watch Reservoir Dogs, right? So, what else in my notes do I have here? Okay, so it's Bryan Singer directing it. If you know the name, it's probably because he directed the first X-Men movie, the second X-Men movie, X-Men Days of Future Past, and the one in theaters right now, X-Men Apocalypse. That's primarily what he's known for, is the X-Men guy. He also co-created House and directed the pilot of House, and he's made a bunch of movies. This was kind of his real introduction to the industry, and people took notice. And I gotta say, as standard as the story is, and the direction kind of dictates a lot of the time in a movie like this, just the screenplay's doing the hard work. But Fincher, I wish Fincher directed it. Singer does a really good job. There's lots of really cool, like, 70s zoom-ins on people or locations. There's lots of cool pans. All the visual information you need for the payoff to work is laid in nicely. It does feel a tad cliche at times, visually and dialogue-wise, but what do you expect? It's a 1995 movie with a bunch of people who are trying to look cool. So obviously it's a little dated. But that doesn't really distract too much, I don't think, when you're watching it. I will say about Stephen Baldwin, he's really good in the movie. I'm not sure what he's done since or before. I really don't know Stephen Baldwin's filmography, but based on this, he's a good actor, and he's got good chemistry with everybody else. What else we got? Oh, I was going to mention the score. The score is really good, too, but it's a full-on Hitchcockian kind of Psycho, Vertigo, Rear Window kind of score. Very classical score, which is really why I think the movie was such a hit, beyond the amazing twist, is it's kind of a classic story. Like, there's a boogeyman, and who is it? And there's this guy, this overlord figure that is so powerful that he can destroy you with, at a whim. The idea that if you're a professional criminal, you may have already worked for the guy and had never even known it, because he's that deep and that secretive. It's also got very classic film noir things about broken men who are trying to escape a bad life, but they keep getting sucked back in. It's even got all the tropes of, like, in a film noir, there's always the moment where you could just leave. Like, they don't have to continue. They could just stop doing what they're doing. That happens a few times in this movie. So it's a classic story. Again, the reference to Casablanca in the title. So, I understand why people love this movie a lot. The acting's a lot of fun. It is quotable. It's cool. When the violence happens, it's pretty cool, like 90s style violence, and then like this, sensitized CGI blood, over-edited bullshit that we get in most movies nowadays. It's also cool that for a movie that's like an R-rated film, that's, considered a suspense movie or a mystery, that was a hit, it really takes its time, and it's not, like, even when the action happens, it's not like a frantically edited thing. I like movies that take their time, and I feel like that's an art of storytelling that's been lost in this day and age, with the exception of people like David Fincher, who, if you're a genius director, whatever genre you tackle is going to be good. But it's been a while since, like, it feels very 90s, this movie, in a good way. Like I said, you're gonna think about Pulp Fiction and the Coen Brother movies, and you're gonna be reminded of lots of things, but it's so solidly in its own genre. Before Michael Bay came along with Bad Boys and blew everything up 19 times. Which, nothing against Bad Boys, but anyway, it's a cool throwback kind of movie. I think that's all my notes. Yep. So that's pretty much all I gotta say. Thank you for watching. Thank you, Robert, for suggesting me to watch it. I'm glad I hadn't seen it in years, so it was cool to rewatch it. I was gonna watch it on DVD, but it turns out I gave the copy to my mom because I was so fucking done with that movie. Like, I don't need this anymore. I honestly never thought I'd watch that movie again until I had kids one day, and they were like, "What's The Usual Suspects?" So that's pretty much it for this first episode of something requested reviews. Viewer requested reviews. Thank you for thanks for watching episode 1 of Viewer requested reviews. As always, I am George. Like I said, hit me up in the comments below if you think I suck, or if you think I'm good, or if you have something you want me to review and talk about. Find me on Twitter, find me on Instagram, find me on Facebook. I'm not hard to find, and boy, Kevin Spacey's a good actor, isn't he? Like, so good. In fact, I think I'll just close this way. The greatest trick the devil... I can't even do it right. I've had too much tequila. The greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world he didn't exist. And like that, he's gone.